Hi, my name is Jed. I'm one of the operators at Easy Outs Property Services in Bel Air, Maryland. I'm just going to take a few minutes here to give a brief introduction to the next video that I'll be putting out and just give you a little bit of groundwork for what we'll be covering. We're going to start discussing government contracts and also commercial contracts. What to look for whenever you start bidding on them and how to land those. A lot of people, first off, don't even know how to begin to be considered for those bids. And finding that information is one of the keys to even potentially breaking into that market. Sometimes it might be as easy as knocking on a business's door, but a lot of times that is not the case for the larger contracts, and certainly not the case for most government contracts, at least in larger metro areas such as where I live in the Baltimore region of the country. Once you do get into the area where you're able to find out where these opportunities are and how you are able to access the bids, you actually have to sometimes pay to get the paperwork to even find out what is included in the bid. And a lot of times it's things you can just print off also. But a lot of times when you do get these bids, here's just two of them. This is how much paperwork, and these are individual bids. This is one bid right here, okay? And I'm trying to not give too much information away. And here's another bid here. This is the information that you have to read before you can even bid, okay? And for a lot of people that's overwhelming. Most people don't read more than 10 books in their entire life, and most of them don't read any after they graduate high school. And that is over 200 pages each right there. Those are pretty substantial bids. Now these are more geared towards lawn and landscaping, as that's where most of our focus is for these videos. Obviously we're not doing highway construction. I can only imagine how humongous the bid proposals would have to be in those circumstances. But with these, again, it's overwhelming for a lot of people, and most people, as I said, can't find them to begin with. Then they do find them and they get the paperwork and they're like, oh my God, I have to read all of this and I don't understand this. It's not exactly legal jargon. However, it is pretty intricate and it's above the average reading level for a lot of people. As if you're not familiar with the terms, it can become, again, overwhelming. But the important thing to remember is that you take your time, you read it. You have to actually read it so you don't get yourself in trouble by not understanding what was required, and maybe you bid ridiculously low and get stuck with something. When we get these, myself and also my wife, we each read them completely, every page, and we read it more than one time each, and then we discuss it and we make sure that we actually understand what's required and whether or not we can actually perform those tasks. You have to be realistic with it. I will admit, with our first contract that we did land, it was for mowing roadsides and medians, and it was fairly local, but it's a pretty big contract for most people, and generates about $5,000 a month of income. And with that, it's there's a lot of learning that goes into it once you do it. An interesting story with that situation is we were not even the lowest bidder. What happened was we were the second lowest bidder. The lowest bidder bid what equated to about $15 an acre to mow. And anyone with any kind of knowledge in the industry or dealing with this type of industry knows that that is not a reasonable fee to charge to be able to actually maintain and provide that service. When the government is looking at these, or businesses are looking at these, they do want the lowest price, but they want the lowest reasonable price. So what happened was, basically that lowest bid was thrown out. It prolonged the process a little bit, but we were called back because we were the next lowest bid. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen. The reason I say that is the first rotation we go out and we're assuming that this starts in April, and that's what the contract says. But we didn't get authorization to start until the middle of May. So we're going out to cut, and the grass is literally more than 3 feet tall in a lot of places and thick. We're bogging down equipment, we're breaking belts and having to mow it, one mower right after the other with the deck all the way up. Then even after that, having to go back and mow it again to get it to look decent. And, the equipment we had was what we thought would be sufficient, and it wasn't. We ended up having to buy additional equipment and more powerful equipment, which we did. Luckily, we had thought ahead and had the means to do that. That's another thing to keep in mind, is that whenever you do approach these, you can't just start off doing government contracts and large business contracts if you're just starting out, because if you don't have the equipment and the experience, you're not going to be able to handle it, or the funds to purchase the equipment if you do have the experience. Basically, this type of video is not even for somebody that's just starting out. It's more for people that are already in business, already have their equipment in place for the most part, and have an idea of what their cost of operation is, and a concept of how they can bid appropriately based on their costs of operation. If you're just starting out, you really should shy away from this stuff. You might get lucky, or you might get really just punished financially by trying to bite off more than what you can chew. In our circumstance, we ended up buying some heavier duty equipment, and that was great. But the whole gist of that was we found out something in these contracts, and a lot of these government contracts or business contracts often come back to the discretion of an employee for them. In our case, a government employee who determines when the grass gets cut based on what they feel is the need and what their budget will handle. So basically, we got screwed pretty hard on that first rotation, and to be honest, we were accomplishing about 5 acres or less a day with a crew of 5 people. That's terrible. We were expecting to be doing 15 to 20 acres a day, and obviously we were losing money at that point. So we purchased the additional heavier equipment, and the next rotation went better. The next rotation after that went better, and each successive rotation improved for the most part, other than, your little things here and there. But the main thing is, if you're even going to consider government contracts, you have to have the equipment and processes in place first, or the ability to purchase the equipment necessary to handle those jobs immediately if it should arise. You should make sure you have redundancy of equipment as well in case something goes down, that way you have a backup. Because with these government contracts, they're usually pretty time restrictive on when you can work and how quickly they want it done. So you don't want to mess that up, because a lot of times when you bid on another government contract, they want to know what other government contracts you hold, and they will get in contact with those contacts to see what your performance has been like. So you screw one up, a lot of times it's going to end up costing you future business, and this is pretty profitable business. So again, if you don't have the processes in place, don't even bother yet. Start out smaller, wait till you get your business processes in place, then you can start trying to tackle the bigger jobs. If you already have the processes in place but you don't have the equipment yet, make sure you have the means to purchase the equipment if you get the bid approved. Keep tuning back in. I'm going to post some additional videos on how this whole process works. If you have any questions or comments, please post below comments. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, and I'll try to do the same for you if you have your own videos as well. Thanks a lot.